Good morning. My name is Nada Stirratt, and I'm the Vice President of Global Marketing Solutions in North America for Facebook. And I'm so excited to be here this morning. And joining me is Alison Lewis, Chief Marketing Officer of Johnson & Johnson. So welcome, Alison.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here this morning.
Great to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
So let's start by looking at CES. We're surrounded by thousands of companies.
Yes.
Why are you here, and what are you excited about learning?
So I love CES because it's a chance at the beginning of the year to really peek around the corner and see what's next. It's so easy when you work in a big company, as both of us do, where you can become very internally focused. And it's when you lift your head up and you see what's new that will inform where you might need to go in the future. And that really informs strategy and the actions that you take as you think about 2019 and beyond.
Wow. And so what have you seen that's been interesting so far?
So things I've seen that have been interesting so far, first of all, I'll just say there's a huge demand for sleep products. You see a number of, starting last year, a number of things that help you get a better sleep, reduce snoring.
Wow.
Where they've evolved to this year is really a more natural place. So a pillow that detects your heart rate and calms you down to allow you to sleep. Or an alarm clock that wakes you up not only with a noise, but actually fresh brewed coffee. So that whole sense of the smell to wake you up. And I know that would get me up in the morning.
That would be perfect. That's incredible.
Very, very interesting.
So let's talk a little bit about Johnson & Johnson. You've been in the CMO role now for 13 years, since 2013. And a lot has happened over the last 5 or 6 years, especially in the way that consumers are expecting brands to interact with them. So tell us a little bit about how you've had to evolve.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges that we have, again, back to being a big company, is that there's so many sort of disruptors in the marketplace. And there's so many of these smaller brands who are doing an amazing job of really staying close to the consumer, reacting really, really quickly, and leaning into much more of a test and learn sort of environment. So some of the things that we really have to evolve to today is think of ourselves as a giant startup. We have a huge benefit in terms of the scale that we have against all of our businesses. But at the same time, how do we implement more of that startup mentality? And so some of the things that you have to do when you think like a startup is much more co-creation with your primary consumer or primary prospect. And so a great example is our Johnson's baby shampoo. We just relaunched our whole Johnson's business with new formulas, new packaging, new proposition for the brand overall. And part of that was restaging our iconic Johnson's Baby No More Tears shampoo. Well, we heard a lot from moms in the spirit of co-creation that they didn't like dyes in their products. But this product had always been our gold shampoo. It was iconic gold shampoo, no more tears. With a lot of debate, we decided to remove the dyes, and the gold shampoo is no longer gold. And I think that's a great example of co-creation and something that I can honestly say probably 15 or 20 years ago we never would have done.
Thought of that.
Never would have done. But today, listening to those consumers and being much closer to the consumers is what makes a difference in terms of acting more like a giant startup.
But I also like the idea that, again, as an iconic brand, and it's such rarefied air in which you operate that I like reading about the part that the bottle itself is yellow because there's something visually necessary when you own an important brand. Actually, you don't even own that brand. The consumers own that brand for you.
That's exactly it. I think you're in a world where the consumers own that brand, and if we took away the visual cue of yellow, we would have found ourselves in trouble because this is a product that was used on me as a child, that you know my grandmother used on my mother as a child, and so you have to have those visual cues, but also lean into what consumers want today.
So let's talk a little bit about formats. I mean, you've done some really extraordinary work. We've seen at Facebook, certainly, that the stories phenomenon has exploded. And when you've done interesting things with Aveeno Baby and some of the other relaunches and rebrands, you've leveraged stories in a very big way. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so stories has been a great format for us. And I'll use Aveeno Baby as sort of an example where in Q4 2017, the US team worked very closely with you guys and said, look, how do we think about 2018 and how do we think about Aveeno Baby differently, knowing that the mom today is definitely mobile first. The mom today has an insatiable need for content related to her baby and the products that she might use. But we're learning our way into the whole mobile first world. And so we work very closely with you guys and the creative shop to really come up with content that would connect with mom. And we first launched in Q1 2018, and phenomenal results in that the sales actually were up and share was up. We continued on through Q2, Q3, Q4 with different themes and different content. And so at the end of the day, we had about 84% live on Facebook stories last year with Aveeno Baby. And the most exciting thing is we got more moms to use the product on their babies more often because our sales and our share were up in 2018
that's fantastic.
for our Aveeno Baby business. So thank you.
Oh,
and the whole program was on Facebook and with Aveeno with stories. So.
No, thank you. It's a partnership, obviously, that we're incredibly proud of. You touched on a couple themes, and certainly when we've had many conversations about this, on some of the things that you are looking for that are going to be really important in the year ahead.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think one of the things, and I'll talk a little bit about something we're unveiling this week at CES, is personalization. I mean, I think that, again, the person today, the human today, the consumer today really wants things customized for them. And so we've spent a lot of time over the last 3.5 years really driving more precision-based marketing in our communications. And so that has a lot to do with understanding what's the problem we're trying to solve, how do we build an audience around that problem, and how do we send, very unique messages to that consumer that are unique and special and answer the questions that that consumer has and gets that conversion. But we're moving it now, the whole idea of personalization, into the product space. And so we've just unveiled Neutrogena Mask ID, which is the first personalized mask, 3D printed. So essentially you take a picture of your face. The mask is built to actually fit your face, because if you've ever used one of those paper masks, sometimes they're a little bit sloppy and a little bit messy for the shape of your face. And then the 3D printing actually deposits onto the mask the things that you need, which are different across the totality of your face. So you might need something different on your forehead versus different on your eye area versus different on your chin versus different on your nose. So it's a truly personalized product through 3D printing and leveraging mobile technology that we launched last year actually at CES, which was the Neutrogena 360, which scans the skin and tells you, what the problems are at the various places on your skin. So super excited that we've sort of taken precision and personalization that we did from a communications front and now moving it into the product front. So tying it directly to something that you see every day and you can use every day.
And then stay with that for a second. So then how are you having to rethink media in general, and how are you articulating all of that with your consumers?
Yeah, so that also has a lot to do with sort of the how do we get and think more like a retailer and the purchase funnel. So we've rolled out something called the 4 C's, which is really thinking more like a retailer as you think about, okay, how do I capture my consumer? How do I convince my consumer? How do I convert my consumer? And how do I commit my consumer? So sort of those 4 C's. And thinking of it much more like a retailer and not just at the top of the funnel where you're thinking awareness and reach, which, I've been in CPG for almost 30 years, and I would say that's how we always thought about it, was awareness and reach. Now we're getting to think more like a retailer using this 4 C's framework. And so while we look at it from a media perspective, and Facebook is absolutely a part of that, we're also looking at it from a content perspective and lining up the content against those 4 C's. So that's a very different way of sort of storytelling and content and media than we've embarked on in the past, and we're really excited as we continue that journey.
But that's incredible advice to tell people. Think like a retailer, especially at the CPG side. What other pieces of wisdom do you have to leave us with today?
Yeah, so think like a retailer is definitely something. I do think that's part of this whole giant startup. I think a lot of these startup companies think much more like a retailer than we do, and we have to transition to that. So absolutely, that's one piece of advice. Another piece of advice I would say is just we're at a time where change has never been faster. And so it requires a lot of intellectual humility. And I think that's where sometimes we struggle as bigger organizations because, we've done it this way always, and we sort of know this business and we know what's right, and this is what the consumers always said. But you have to be willing to sort of undo that and listen and really get close to the consumer and think about what are those sort of sacred cows you might challenge for yourself. That takes intellectual humility. And I think all of us could do a lot more if we were always intellectually humble.
I think that's a perfect way to end our lovely time this morning. So thank you so much to everyone there spending time with us, and thank you to Alison, and enjoy the rest of CES.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.